Ladies and gentlemen of the British Double Reed Society and those who have yet to decide, welcome to an online meeting between Ewan Millar and me, Nicholas Daniel. I'm the Oboe president of the BDRS, and I'm so proud and so happy that Ewan has got so far in the BBC Young Musician competition. Ewan, welcome. It's great to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
So you're at Oxford, aren't you? What are you studying?
I'm studying music, or I suppose musicology, if we're going to be more fancy about it. But
Yeah.
um,
So have you had lectures in person at university?
I did for the first two terms. Obviously, prior to COVID hitting, we had lectures, and they were a nice way to structure your day, actually. But since then, it's all been lectures have all been online. We've had some tutorials in person.
But you've been in Oxford, have you?
I've been in Oxford for. I was in Oxford for the first term of second year, so that was last sort of September to
Yeah,
December.
right.
But I've not been in Oxford last term of last year or the term just gone, which is
Such a
unfortunate.
shame, isn't it? It's just awful, really. Well, I mean, we've all got our own Corona stories to tell, and but I think one of the stories for you must be about somehow believing that you're going to be doing this thing, um, and
Mm.
so you've had a sort of long term thoughts about preparing yourself, about preparing, obviously oboistically preparing yourself, but also mentally. How have you sort of been going about that? Is it visualization? What's been going on?
I suppose it's all about a little bit like being an athlete. I suppose it's about trying to find when you peak in a sense, because it's not like a linear progress in terms of preparing, and that's become very obvious from having the date permanently sort of
Moving.
permanently in flux. We're never quite sure when it's going to happen. And so you're constantly beginning to prepare the piece and then putting it aside for a bit. And each time you come back to it, you realize that you've got to temper the way in which you work at it and work at different things at different points in the preparation process, so that you try as best as possible to be on find that perfect form for when it happens.
Well, it's very interesting. I think in a way, competition preparation is like the Olympics. I mean, I remember from doing, well, obviously BBC, but also Munich competitions, which was an immense amount of repertoire, including the oh, which concerto was it? It was in the first round, and it was I can't remember what it was now, but it's just tip of my tongue. But it was an immense amount of work, that piece,
mm.
and they we had to prepare all of it. And then they only asked for the first movement. I was absolutely furious.
Oh, that is really
But it
frustrating.
was so it was huge, and then we finished with Mozart concerto. But that was comparatively joyous. I mean, compared to everything else we'd had to do,
Mm.
everything from Berio Sequenza to Schumann romances to you name it. So it was an immense, and it was all set. So yes, I know exactly what you mean. It's interesting. I follow quite a few athletes actually online because I find it really interesting to see their preparation, and also free diving is I'm very interested in. There's some amazing free divers, and it's quite
Uh-huh.
big similarities with oboe playing, I think. Interestingly enough, free diving is as much about mental training as physical training. So, how do you go about? I suppose if you feel physically prepared for a piece, but it's got to be the mental side of it too. How have you approached that?
I've There's always a certain letting go before you go on stage that I find quite useful. I've never found myself too stressed out generally, but obviously when it came to the semi-finals of the competition, which was actually the last big thing I played now a year
What
later,
you mean the last thing you actually played at all?
yeah, in person really, that stressed me out more than anything prior to it had. Um, and you can do all the breathing exercises and things like that. But I often find when I actually walk onto the stage, the process of walking onto the stage, something leaves your body. A lot of the anxiety just lifts because you, in a way, you cross the threshold and you realize, well, there's not, I can't do anything more now. One more scale isn't going to help me, do this.
No, I think that's very profound what you just said, and I think I feel exactly the same. And I think it's the moment where you realise. I mean, even if it's only a few people, like it probably will. I'm not sure how many people are, but you've got an audience, and so there's that fact that you actually connect the composer, you, and the end result of it. I mean, that's what Britain talked about, wasn't it? There's the sacred triangle of composer, performer, audience. I always think that there's something more actually in a way. It's not really a sort of religious thing. It's more for me. It's more that there's the inspiration of where that comes from, whether it's from outside or inside. I was walking with a lovely, great composer friend of mine the other day, and we were walking at Grafenwater, and it was the most beautiful misty sunset. And I said, "Does that make you think of music? Do you hear music when you sit?" She said, "No, no, no, no." She said, "It comes completely from inside me." But different composers see something and then it just sets off. I think sometimes it's reading for some composers as well sets things off. Thought trains of thought. But I agree with you, that wonderful feeling when you actually see the audience and you know you're going to connect with them. I think that's a very healthy thing. I do actually do. I do a sort of pogo stick thing when I'm really nervous. I just do pogoing as if I'm at a Lady Gaga concert or something. There's a horrible idea for you. But no, it really helps because it's to do with grounding and sort of getting your knees springy as well, because that's, if you get locked at all, that's one of the things. It's like you
Mm.
say, breathing really helps. Oh, this is just wonderful. Thank you for that insight. I think perhaps you ought to tell us a bit about the piece you're going to play. I mean, we'll know more about it because we'll have watched it. But I would love to know why you chose it and how you first heard it, and what it means to you.
I first just heard it on I was on a music course back when I was sort of 17 years old, and the oboe tutor stopped one of our sectionals for like half an hour just to be like, this is amazing concerto I heard, because it was composed in, I believe, 2015, or maybe it was premiered in 2015.
Yeah.
um and obviously it's quite unlike most other repertoire that you find on the oboe, and it's in a very catching way because it treats the oboe a little bit like some kind of medieval shawm, and the atmosphere it evokes
At
in
times it does. Yeah. Mm.
yeah, it uses it in a way that seems almost obvious given the sound that the oboe produces, and the sort of atmosphere it creates, but one that you don't actually find too often, which is, well, it's that's really amazing. And obviously the composer himself, Navarro, is Spanish, and you find all the Spanish influences, and he composes lots of film music. You find the massive filmic scorings that are just lush. So it's a unique combination of things actually. But it grabbed me, and I performed it back in 2019 with a local orchestra, and it
Great.
just seemed like a really
Oh,
sound.
that's such an advantage that you've performed it. That's really great because so often, if you learn a relatively new piece, it's quite rare, particularly recently, to have had the chance to actually have performed that. That's great.
Mm,
Um, I think it's a fabulous piece because it's, as you say, it's got those filmic influences, and of course, people will be watching it on the TV, so it'll be really, it'll seem like a because they'll do a great job with the filming. They always do, and it'll be quite
mm.
dramatic, I think.
Oh yeah.
And it's also, it is unbelievably virtuoso. I mean, it really is a piece for a virtuoso, such as yourself. And I think that's a great thing because people think of the oboe as this. Well, sometimes think of the oboe as this slightly staid, um, sort of. Actually, there's a very famous Korean conductor called Sung Kwak, and when
Mm.
I saw his name written down when I was doing a concerto with him, I thought Sung Kwak. Well, that's what the oboe should be like. It's a singing duck. That's
That's-
actually his name. He's a very famous conductor. But it's like we've got this rather staid idea. But I mean, all you've got to do is listen to the Elliott Carter concerto or James Macmillan's concerto or any of these incredible great pieces. I mean, the Carter wasn't really, but great pieces written for people such as myself to know that the oboe can do so much more. And actually, I love the way that this piece is written, that it sounds even harder than it actually is. I mean, it's hard, but it's also very well written, isn't it? Don't you think?
it does sit remarkably well. the vast majority of the time, and the finger
There's a
work.
few moments.
There's a few moments. The finger work varies in in what task it's being asked to do, and it does get extremely fast and mind-bogglingly complex in some ways. But at the same time, it's, I don't know if this is coincidental or very well thought out and planned, but it sits at reasonably pleasant registers for doing the things that it does. So it's that's always a useful thing. It's always useful to have a piece that sounds a little bit more difficult than it is, rather than the other way
Yes.
around.
Well, it's a sign of a really good composer. I mean, I
Mm,
work a lot with Thea Musgrave, who's in her mid 90s now, and she prides herself on things really feeling well. And it's one of those things that composers don't always think about. I mean, some do, but
mm,
they're often more interested in what they're doing than how it feels for you. But I think sometimes that somebody who's achieved a certain kind of level in their composing actually gets to the point where they want to know how things feel and they want to understand that. I mean, I know he's written for clarinet as well. He wrote for my great friend Jose
mm.
Frank Ballester, and that was a great piece too. And there's a version with wind band. There's a version with wind band for this, isn't there?
Yeah, I think it's the most popular version on YouTube is the one with wind band. It's the one that seems most professionally shot and everything, and it works extremely well.
With
Uh,
Ramon Ortega, yes, fantastic, great
yeah.
oboes. And I mean, I think that the wind band world, when we come back to real life, the wind band world would benefit from you going and playing this piece with a lot of great bands. I mean, in America, it's a
Mm.
huge industry. It's a huge part of learning, and Japan too, and the Far East. And I mean, it's one of those things that you could probably make money with it, my friend.
Yeah, see if I can bring it around the place. I mean, yeah, I've always quite liked wind bands actually. I used to do the National Youth Wind Ensemble for a year, and there was a local wind band here that did actually do quite a few competitions and was quite high quality. So I've always
Great.
quite enjoyed playing in them. And you always play those American pieces that they have the graded difficulty. It's like grade 5, 6,
Yes.
7 or
Yes.
whatever. Right?
Well, I mean, it's a huge thing, and the British Association is a massive, the international association too. I mean, it's not a world one digs into that much, but I think it's a strange role for the oboe in a wind band because you haven't got the great choirs of clarinets and the sort of saxophones and things.
Mm.
So we tend to kind of fall slightly between things inside wind bands in my limited experience. But actually having a concerto is a really great thing. So let's quickly talk about reeds. How's your reed feeling? How are your reeds feeling?
Currently, my reads are feeling quite promising for a week's time. It's going well, and the one read that I am protecting with all my life to keep it all there for the week for the day has been playing just better and better, which is really promising. I've got a good few backups, so currently all is stress free on the read front.
And are you making them yourself?
I am making them myself. I
Fantastic.
learnt that was the most productive thing that lockdown has done for me is I learned to make reads, which was so needed.
Well, I mean, it just gives you your own voice, doesn't it? That's the thing. It does change. Actually, when I heard you play, yes, just the other day, I was thinking that the sound had deepened, and that I think that probably is partly to do with reed making. I'm sure it is. What cane are you using? Do you know? Is it gouge and shaped? What shape? Let's do the geek thing.
Let's do the geek.
I loathe it, but I also kind of morbidly love it. So, what shape are you using?
I'm using RC12.
Yep.
I think I'm gonna come across quite standard. So RC12, and I'm using the 47-2 staples as the Chirugi.
Aha. And
Um,
you're not gouging, are you?
no, not yet.
You're
So
profiling.
no, I'm not everything currently. I am hand scraping all my reads.
Good
Um,
for you.
I'm sure one day I will need to, for necessity of efficiency and time, begin profiling. But I think it is a useful skill to have.
Oh, incredibly. And also, even when you profile, as I found, I didn't buy a profiler until a couple of years ago. You still have to have the skills because it's the finishing off that's the hardest thing. But it really does save the most enormous amount of time
Mm.
having a profiler. Yeah, it's wonderful. So, and what cane are you using?
So I mostly the reeds that I mostly have right now are oboe shop cane, but I also have a batch that I'm beginning to use of Rosso Chanton cane.
Rose Chanton. You
Yeah.
know, in 1981, I met Dimitar Jordanov in a youth orchestra in Berlin, and he was
Oh.
in Bulgaria, and he came in 2 days late because the communist authorities had stopped him from coming from East Germany into West Germany in Berlin.
Mm.
And he turned up, and we spoke broken French together because he spoke some French, and we've been friends ever since actually. And he's moved back to Canada now, but he's a major force in the world of oboe cane, and it's
Mm.
kind of and probably bassoon cane too. If I'm not sure, but and he's done some great work. And then of course he was in Lyon for quite a while. He came. I'm in Germany right now, so he came to my school here and gave us read sessions and things, which was really great.
Oh, fab.
But no, he's a great person. Yes, an oboe shop Punkt der. So you're kind of slightly German influence there. No, it's good. So do you know what cane it is?
Uh,
It's probably their best one. Is it their premium version?
uh, Possibly, probably. I'm
I've
not
got some. I'll give you a little bit of this very good cane I bought from a friend the other day. It's from the late '80s and early '90s Alio.
sure. Ooh, right.
Somebody to gouge it well for you. You might need to experiment with a few bits. So I'll give you some of that. Because I will be up in Manchester with you next week,
Yeah.
not on your behalf actually, although I'm with you in spirit, but commenting for the BBC. So yes, and I'll be saying great things about you.
Thank you.
But I have to have a non-biased approach, so don't ask me how I'm going to do that. No, I mean obviously I want to be completely impartial and react exactly what I'm hearing, and it's very exciting. So. You're about to go into your third year at Oxford, is that right?
Yes, so I've got one more term of my second year, and then I'm off into third year.
And have you made any plans for what to do after that at all? I mean, is the oboe going to be your life?
Oh, at the very least, it's going to be part of it. I think post Oxford, definitely, I want to go to music college. I want to spend the necessary time learning as best as I can the oboe. Um, and then from there, I might decide to go back into academia for a bit, or I might decide that I'm actually just set trying to be an oboist for the rest of my life. Um, I think,
You know what? These are rather new times we live in, and the last years, even before Corona, have been very different. And I have a very open-minded group of students generally who have interest in all sorts of things. One of them is interested in supporting his local community where he comes from by buying land and growing oboe cane on it. He's got quite an environmental consciousness. Another one, James Turnbull, runs a brilliant website all about the oboe. It's called Learn to Play the Oboe. He's recently started an extraordinary market for musical instruments. I mean, an online market. He's just so full of ideas. He teaches at several different schools, and I mean the Purcell School with Mel Rank, your teacher, and also at junior college. And he's just so he messaged me this morning about another absolutely brilliant idea he's had, which I won't spill. But so, and he's also like looking at doing doctorates in particular forms of research into education. He's thought about it, but he's also got 3 kids, so he's kind of got his hands full.
yeah.
But I think it's possible. I mean, even actually Tom Barber, who's an ex-student of mine, who did medicine at Cambridge, got a first, and is now, I think he's a neurologist. I might have got that wrong, but he's a very important doctor in Oxford, and he's also still principal oboe in the Aurora Orchestra.
Oh, I see.
So you know, if you're clever enough, it's possible to mix and match. I mean, look at
Yeah.
me. I do so many. I mean, I'm a professor in Germany. I run a festival. I'm a soloist. I have 2 beautiful cats that I want to spend every minute with, and so there's lots of other things, and I conduct as well. I haven't done any in the last year, but and also just generally work a lot with equity and fairness as much as I can since things since we really finally eventually woke up to what the heck's going on in not in our profession only, but
Mhm.
a lot in that, and also about in fields of with politics to an extent, about trying to get education to be more important. But you don't have to do any of that. What you need to do is play your oboe beautifully for a week. But eventually there'll be a lot of pulls on your time. Have you got any particular areas where, I mean, even in academic research, which have really interested you that you might like to sort of continue with alongside playing the oboe?
Yeah, so currently, as I'm preparing for dissertations and things like that, I'm really trying to find which niches in academia most appeal to me. And I've always treated the fact that my course is a music course nominally in a sort of um, a sort of fairly unimportant way. Like, music is the point of relation by which you can explore all kinds of cultural, social, political theory, that kind of thing. Um, and certainly the politics and the philosophy, I find is the central point of focus, as I'm writing dissertations and things like that, which I then relate to the musical world. Often looking at the sort of ways in which we intake music now and how they relate to corporations and economics, ideas of, I only briefly touched on things, the ideas of sort of platform capitalism and things like that, and how it relates to Spotify and SoundCloud, and these ideas of platform-based music consumption. How we think about it in terms of, is this an increase in musical freedom? Is this an increase in market centralization and control? It's those kind of questions I think are most interesting currently.
And I'm just looking up something because I found out about a thing the other day that I didn't know about. I think they're called. Wait. NFTs.
NFTs. What
Ah,
does that stand for?
that's very interesting. You don't know about NFTs. They're non something somethings. I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but it's related to online currency and Bitcoin, and it's a way of stamping something. So the wife of the guy who started, I think it was Twitter, bought. No, I think actually what happened was the very first tweet was bought as a single identifiable unit for some vast amount of money. I mean, there's silly money going on about it, as there is with things like Bitcoin. But actually, I'm not sure about its application to music yet. But if it grows and changes and becomes more possible, it might be a way of identifiably stamping something that you've done, so that nobody else can misuse it
Hmm.
or can do it without. Because the thing is, what's happened is that we've all given away Spotify. I mean, when the BBC Symphony Orchestra renegotiated contracts a few decades ago, maybe 15 years ago, so a decade and a half ago, they gave away all their rights when they play on TV because they had a quite big pay increase, which looked good.
Hmm.
But now the idea of them giving that away seems, in foresight, with hindsight, looks different. It looks different now. So I would say I was so it's so funny that it's me telling you to go and look up NFTs. I find that completely hilarious. But I hadn't even heard of them 10 days ago. So then we've been investigating it. There's quite a few good podcasts. I'll send you some links.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting. Well, I will let you get off and practice now again, unless you've done too much today. But thank you so much for your time. Oh, what are you going to wear?
Ooh. I'm wearing it may be painfully boring. It's black DJ, and it's a nice sort of dress shirt with the winged collars, bow tie, and a cummerbund. Um,
Very good.
so
That
there's
sounds
a little
good.
bit of fashion there, but we obviously, you can't really do much shopping right now for new stuff. So it's the old DJ from younger days.
That's fine. And what about the shoes? Do you know the shoes already?
The shoes. I mean, my normal black concert shoes. Although I'd be pushed to give a more accurate description of
Yeah.
those.
No, I tell you why I say that is because sometimes people do go shopping before something big, and then they
Hmm.
walk on stage wearing shoes for the first time, and their feet don't feel like their own.
Mm.
And I was given some very, very good advice, which was, and it was actually metaphorical, but it is that get used to the shoes you're wearing. This doesn't apply to you. Get used to the shoes you're wearing before you go on stage in them, and it applies slightly more to women than to men, because that's often a thing. But that's very good. You're wearing comfy shoes. Listen, you are a total breath of fresh air for our instrument. I, as a previous winner of this competition, wish you all possible luck. I want you to win. I really do, and I want you to have an absolutely amazing ride um, with it. And I just think we're so proud of you, and about to be a lot prouder. So um, go and do your thing, and let it be. You just be completely authentically yourself. Breathe and relax, and it's just going to be great. And I think what's fantastic is you're not playing a piece that everybody knows. I
Mm.
think playing the Strauss at this point would be so much more pressure.
Oh gosh.
Don't you think? So, I mean, I've spent a lot of my time as a concerto soloist playing pieces that are new, and I find that a great sort of. It's so the first time I ever went on stage to conduct a Beethoven symphony, I was literally shaking.
Yeah.
You do Beethoven 7, you think of all the great conductors who've done that of the first chord of Beethoven 7, and you just go, woo! But yeah, so good luck, Ewan, and thank you so much for your time today. The BDRS are very proud of you, and we thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.